What if I told you that 3 old Washington quarters, from 1965, 1966, and 1967, could be hiding more than just pocket change value? These coins may look worn, dirty, and completely ordinary, but they were made during one of the most dramatic changes in U.S. coin history. No mint marks, no silver, and in rare cases, surprising collector demand. Before you spend another old quarter, you'll want to see this. First up, we're looking at a coin that many Americans have handled thousands of times without giving it a second thought. The 1965 Washington quarter dollar with no mint mark. At first glance, it may look like just another worn silver-colored quarter. It may be scratched, dull, and clearly circulated. But this coin comes from one of the most important turning points in modern United States coin history. And because of that, even a circulated example can carry more interest than many people realize. The year 1965 was a time of major change in America. The country was deeply involved in the Vietnam War. The economy was growing, but inflation was starting to rise. Most importantly for coin collectors, the United States was facing a serious coin shortage. Silver prices had increased, and people began saving silver coins instead of spending them. As silver became more valuable, quarters, dimes, and half dollars were disappearing from circulation. Americans were hoarding them, and everyday businesses were struggling to make change. Because of this crisis, Congress made a historic decision in 1965. The U.S. Mint stopped producing quarters made from 90% silver. Instead, it introduced a new copper-nickel clad composition. The 1965 Washington quarter became the first regular-issue quarter made without silver in nearly 35 years. This was a major shift in American coinage. Many people at the time did not like the change, but it was necessary to keep coins in circulation. Another important detail about the 1965 quarter is that it does not carry a mint mark. During the coin shortage, the Mint removed mint marks from all coins from 1965 through 1967. This was done to discourage collectors from pulling coins out of circulation based on where they were made. So even though these quarters were struck at different mint facilities, none of them show a mint mark. For many collectors, this missing mint mark has always made the 1965 quarter stand out. Now let's talk about the design. On the front of the coin, we see the familiar portrait of President George Washington. This design was first introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of his birth. By 1965, Americans had already grown very familiar with Washington's image on the quarter. His profile faces left, calm and steady, with the word Liberty above and the date below. On heavily circulated examples, Washington's hair detail is usually worn flat, and the cheek and jaw areas often appear smooth from years of handling. On the back of the coin, the reverse design features a bold American eagle with its wings spread wide. The eagle stands proudly above a bundle of arrows, symbolizing strength and readiness. Below the arrows are olive branches representing peace. Around the edge are the words United States of America and quarter dollar. In circulated condition, the eagle's chest feathers are often the first detail to wear away. Many 1965 quarters in circulation today show very flat surfaces in this area. Now here is something important to understand. The U.S. Mint produced an enormous number of 1,965 quarters, over 1.8 billion pieces. Because of this high mintage, most circulated 1965 quarters are very common. In worn condition, the typical example is worth only face value, 25 cents. There are simply too many of them for average circulated coins to carry strong premiums. But here is where the story becomes more interesting. Even though most 1965 quarters are common, a small number have special features that make them stand out. For example, there are rare 1965 quarters that were mistakenly struck on leftover 90% silver planchets from 1964. These error coins are extremely rare, but when discovered, they have sold for tens of thousands of dollars. While this is not true for the average circulated clad quarter, it shows how important 1965 was in U.S. coin history. Collectors also look closely at condition and strike quality. Because 1965 was the first year of clad coin production, the Mint was adjusting to new materials and new striking pressures. Some coins were weakly struck. Others show interesting die varieties or doubling in the lettering. A circulated example with visible doubling or an unusual die crack can attract serious interest. Even heavily circulated coins can sometimes surprise collectors if they show strong detail despite wear. A 1965 quarter that still displays bold lettering, clear date numbers, and partial feather detail on the eagle can bring more attention than a typical flat example. Eye appeal still matters even in lower grades. Now let's talk about auction results. Most circulated 1965 clad quarters sell in bulk for small amounts over face value. However, higher-grade circulated examples, those graded extremely fine or about uncirculated, can sell for $20, $50 or sometimes over $100 depending on quality. More dramatic die varieties or error coins have reached much higher prices. One certified 1965 quarter struck on a silver planchet sold for over $7,000 at auction. Another example with strong doubling and high eye appeal brought several $1,000s. While these are not typical circulated coins, they remind collectors that the 1965 issue carries hidden potential. So what lesson can we take from the 1965 Washington quarter with no mint mark? First, never assume that a common-looking coin has no story. This quarter represents the end of the silver era and the beginning of modern clad coinage. It marks a financial and historical turning point in the United States. Second, even circulated coins deserve a careful look. Check the edge for a solid silver color with no copper stripe. That could signal a rare silver error. Look closely at the lettering and date for doubling. Pay attention to strike quality and overall eye appeal. Most 1965 quarters in worn condition are common, but a small number carry features that can raise their value far beyond face value. That is why collectors continue to search through old change, coin rolls, and family collections even today. The 1965 Washington quarter reminds us that history often hides in plain sight. A simple coin worn from years of everyday use can still tell a powerful story about America's economic challenges and decisions. If you enjoyed learning about this important transitional coin, be sure to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and let me know which coin you would like to explore next. Every coin has a past, and sometimes that past is worth far more than 25 cents. Next up, 1966 Washington quarter dollar with no mint mark, found in circulated fine condition. At first glance, this coin may look worn, smooth, and ordinary. It may not shine like a new coin, and the details may be softer from years of use. But this quarter comes from one of the most unusual periods in modern American coin history. And because of that, even a circulated example has a story worth telling. The year 1966 was a time of adjustment in the United States. The country was still dealing with the coin shortage that had started just a few years earlier. Silver prices had risen sharply, and Americans were saving silver coins instead of spending them. As a result, quarters, dimes, and half dollars were disappearing from circulation. Businesses were struggling to make change. To solve this problem, the U.S. Mint had already removed silver from quarters in 1965 and replaced it with a copper-nickel clad composition. So by 1966 the quarter was no longer made of 90% silver. Instead, it had a pure copper core with outer layers of copper and nickel. This new blend looked similar to silver but was much less expensive to produce. The Mint continued this new system in 1966 to help keep coins flowing through the economy. One important detail about the 1966 quarter is that it does not have a mint mark. From 1965 through 1967, the Mint removed mint marks from all circulating coins. This decision was made to discourage collectors from pulling coins out of circulation based on where they were struck. The Mint wanted coins to move freely through the economy, not be saved in large numbers. So even though 1966 quarters were made at multiple facilities, none of them show a mint mark. For collectors, this 3-year period is always interesting because of that missing detail. Now let's look at the design itself. On the front of the coin we see President George Washington facing left. This portrait was first introduced in 1932 and had already become familiar to generations of Americans by the mid-1960s. The word Liberty appears above his head, and the date, 1966, sits below. In fine circulated condition, Washington's hair details are partly worn down, especially above the ear and along the top of the head. The cheek and jawline may look smoother than on a newer coin. On the back, the reverse design shows the American eagle with wings spread wide. The eagle stands over a bundle of arrows, symbolizing strength, with olive branches below representing peace. Around the rim are the words United States of America and quarter dollar. In fine condition, much of the eagle's chest feather detail is worn flat, but the overall shape of the bird remains clear. The lettering should still be bold and readable, even if the finer details are gone. Now here is something important to understand. The U.S. Mint produced more than 800 million quarters in 1966. That is a very large number. Because of this high mintage, most 1966 quarters in circulated condition are common. A typical worn example found in pocket change is usually worth face value, just 25 cents. There are simply too many surviving examples for average coins to carry strong premiums. However, that does not mean the 1966 quarter has no collector interest. What makes certain examples stand out is not just the date but specific characteristics. During this period, the mint was still adjusting to the new clad metal composition. Some coins were weakly struck. Others show small die cracks, light doubling in the lettering, or unusual surface qualities. Even in fine circulated condition, these features can make a coin more desirable. Collectors also pay attention to eye appeal. A 1966 quarter in fine condition that has even wear, no heavy scratches, and smooth surfaces may be more attractive than a coin with deep marks or damage. Coins that have been cleaned harshly usually lose value, but coins with natural toning, soft gray or light golden color that develops over time, can be more appealing. Now let's talk about auction results. Most 1966 quarters in fine circulated condition sell for small amounts above face value, often in bulk lots. However, higher grade examples in about uncirculated or mint state condition can sell for $500, $1,000 or more depending on quality. Coins with strong strike details and original luster can bring even higher prices. More dramatic varieties and errors are where the real surprises appear. A 1966 quarter with strong doubled die features has sold for several $100s. Off-center strikes or coins struck on the wrong type of planchet have reached into the thousands at auction. These are rare, but they remind collectors to look closely at every coin. Even though your 1966 Washington quarter in fine circulated condition may not be rare on its own, it still represents an important time in U.S. history. It comes from the first years of clad coinage, during a period when the mint was working quickly to solve a nationwide coin shortage. It also belongs to the unique 3-year span when mint marks were temporarily removed from all coins. So what lesson can we take from the 1966 Washington quarter? First, history matters. This coin marks the early years of America's transition away from silver coinage. That alone makes it meaningful to collectors. Second, condition and special features always matter. Even a circulated coin can hold value if it shows unusual strike quality, doubling, or error characteristics. And finally, never overlook a worn coin too quickly. Many collectors have discovered valuable varieties in everyday pocket change simply because they took a closer look. The 1966 Washington quarter may seem ordinary, but it carries the story of a nation adjusting to economic pressure and change. That story alone makes it worth understanding and preserving. If you enjoyed learning about this coin, please like the video, share your thoughts below, and let me know which coin you would like to explore next. Every coin has a journey, and sometimes the most worn pieces have the most interesting stories. Now we're looking at the 1967 Washington quarter dollar with no mint mark, found in old, dirty, heavily circulated condition. This is the kind of coin many people overlook. It may be dark in color, worn almost smooth in places, and covered with years of dirt and handling. But even a coin like this has an important story behind it, and for collectors that story still matters. The year 1967 was part of a very unusual period in American coin history. Just like in 1965 and 1966, the United States was still dealing with a nationwide coin shortage. Silver prices had risen sharply earlier in the decade, and people began saving silver coins instead of spending them. Quarters made before 1965 contained 90% silver, and once the public realized their metal was worth more than face value, many coins disappeared from circulation. To fix this problem, the U.S. Mint removed silver from quarters starting in 1965. The new coins were made of a copper core with outer layers of copper and nickel. This is called clad coinage. By 1967, the mint was fully producing these clad quarters to keep coins moving through the economy. Another important detail is the missing mint mark. From 1965 through 1967, the mint removed mint marks from all circulating coins. Officials hoped this would discourage collectors from saving coins based on where they were struck. They wanted coins to stay in circulation, not disappear into private collections. So even though 1967 quarters were made at different facilities, none of them show a mint mark. That makes this 3-year period stand out in American coin history. Now let's talk about the design. On the front of the 1967 quarter is the familiar portrait of President George Washington. This design had been in use since 1932 and was already well known by the late 1960s. The word Liberty appears above Washington's head, and the date 1967 is below. In old and dirty condition, Washington's hair detail is usually worn flat. The cheek and jawline often look smooth, and dirt may have collected in the lettering and around the rim. On the reverse side, we see the American eagle with wings spread wide. The eagle stands over arrows, symbolizing strength, with olive branches below for peace. Around the edge are the words United States of America and quarter dollar. In heavily circulated condition, the eagle's chest feathers are usually completely worn away. The wings may still show outlines, but fine details are often gone. Dirt and dark toning may make the coin look older than it actually is. Now here is something collectors need to understand clearly. The U.S. Mint produced over 1.5 billion quarters in 1967. That is an enormous number. Because of this high production, most 1967 quarters, especially in worn, dirty condition, are very common. In most cases, a heavily circulated example is worth only face value 25 cents. However, that does not mean the coin has no collector interest at all. Even old and dirty coins deserve a careful look. Sometimes what appears to be dirt is natural toning that developed over decades. Natural aging can give a coin a darker gray or even light brown appearance. While heavy dirt can reduce value, natural toning can sometimes make a coin more interesting to collectors. Collectors also search 1967 quarters for error varieties. Because the mint was producing coins quickly during the shortage years, some coins show doubling in the letters or numbers. Others may have die cracks, off-center strikes, or other small minting mistakes. Even a worn coin can show these features. In fact, sometimes dirt actually protects certain areas from further wear, helping details remain visible. Most standard 1967 quarters in poor or fine condition sell in bulk for small amounts over face value. But coins in higher grades, especially those with strong luster and clean surfaces, can sell for $700, $1,200 or more. Certified mint state examples have reached several $100s depending on quality. Error coins are where the higher prices appear. A 1967 quarter with strong double die features has sold for several $100s. More dramatic errors, such as coins struck off-center or on the wrong metal planchet, have reached into the thousands at auction. These are rare cases, but they remind collectors that even common dates can hold surprises. It's also worth mentioning that some 1967 special mint set quarters were produced with better quality finishes. These are different from normal circulation coins. While your old and dirty circulated coin is not part of that special set, it comes from the same important year in American coin history. So what is the lesson from the 1967 Washington quarter? First, history gives value beyond money. This coin represents the final year of the no-mint mark shortage period. It marks the end of a unique 3-year chapter in U.S. coinage. Second, never dismiss a coin just because it looks worn or dirty. While most examples are common, certain varieties and errors can still carry added value. And third, always examine your coins carefully. Check for doubling in the lettering. Look at the edge to confirm the copper stripe that shows it is clad and not silver. Study the surfaces for unusual marks that may signal a minting error. The 1967 Washington quarter in old, dirty condition may not shine like a new coin, but it still tells the story of a nation working through economic change and adapting its coinage for the future.